Morning, ladies and gents. It's the 26th of August 2025, and this session is solely dedicated to dehydrated food and meals, which I was trying to actually get published yesterday. I just didn't get time. So I wanted to do this video on this because out of the four tiers of food preps, now when I say tiers, guys, if you've seen any of my previous food prepping videos, I've broken down food preps into four categories. That being tiers, four tiers. Tier one is freeze dried foods. Second one is dehydrated food. The third one is tinned or canned foods, depending on where in the world you live. And the last tier, tier four, is what I call basic foods. So I like dehydration. Now, I also like freeze dried as well, but it's simply too expensive for us right now. So dehydrating meals is the cheaper option for this family at the moment. The benefit of the dehydration for us is that we can create the meals considered to be, in the most part, family favourites. If there's any allergies to consider, that's sorted. If there's somebody, that doesn't like a particular spice, seasoning, or herb, then that's sorted. And we can just simply leave that out of the meal. But the most exciting thing about this topic is I spent several weeks creating a 2 month or 60-day sort of menu for a family of five. And no 2 days for the dinner portion of this or the evening meal are the same. So the menu has been created on a spreadsheet, as you can see on the screen. Guys, I will zoom into this. I just want to explain, how it's been broken down. But the reason it took me so long is because of the way it's been structured. So it's structured specifically for dehydrating. And with that, I've broken down each meal down into four categories. So the first one is the core of the meal, which you'll see on the left-hand side in a kind of highlighted green. That's the left column. Then second, we've got what I call the mix. Now that's not the yellow column. That yellow column is just a link out to websites that show you how the meal is cooked, how it's prepared, and the ingredients that are involved. So I'm providing that in this spreadsheet so you can cut, copy, and paste it straight into a web browser, and you can see what their recommendations are in terms of how long you cook it for, how to prepare it, and also metrics in terms of ingredients used. That's the mix. So the mix is the blue section. So everything that you see highlighted on the screen in blue, that is the mix. That's the mix of the meal. The third category is what I call herbs, spices, and seasoning category of the meal, which is in orange here, in this section here. And finally, we've got the fourth category, which I've titled Other. You can't see that at the moment, but you will see that in a minute, and that's in the green. That's everything that's great, that's highlighted green there. So let me just first explain quickly, and then let's just take a look at the spreadsheet. And so I'm kind of hoping that you're going to like this. Because of the work that I've put into it, it's going to save you guys a lot of time and effort. So I looked through many recipes, and I decided which dishes are liked by everyone in my family. So from that list, I kind of condensed it down until there were sort of 60 meals. I wanted sort of 2 months worth. That's main meals. Then I found 30 lunches. So that's a month's worth of lunches, and a small handful of sort of breakfasts. It's hard to find, loads and loads of different breakfasts, different one for each day of the month. I then went through the ingredients of each of the meals. I entered them into the spreadsheet. I then spent most of the time breaking down those ingredients, again, down into sections or categories. With the meat, I calculated in weight how much meat was required to cater for the menu. That's the whole menu, not just for each. I calculated for each meal and then added that all up. And then now I know how much meat I need to go off and purchase to get either 30 or 60 days worth of meals. Once everything was categorized, I then sorted each individual ingredient into a dedicated column, which I'll show you again in a minute. just making it easier to read, to sort, and then to it's really then to sort of shop for in bulk as opposed to going out and getting individual items for each meal. You're better off categorizing it and then just going off and buying those ingredients in bulk to cater for 30 or 60 meals. Finally, there was a list of other food items, which is over here on the right in green. Items to sort of store that have been sort of recommended on numerous sort of channels out there. They're kind of, I'll go into this in a little bit more detail just in a second. I just want to sort of explain those four different categories. That's why I've zoomed out so you can see the colors. So again, just quickly, the green column here is your core part of the meal. This is links out the yellow one or the second set. That is one single column actually. That's a link out to where I got the ingredients from. You can paste those into your browser and go off and see how these meals are cooked and prepared. The third one is what I call the mix. Okay, this is vegetables and various other stuff, which is kind of what we cook. We cook that separately as a mix. Okay, so the reason why I've broken these down into, let's say, common sense or logical sections is because of the way we're going to cook in preparation for dehydration. The third one, the oranges over here, is going to be herbs, spices, and seasoning. And then the last one is just other things that are kind of, we kind of have to either add in at the very, very end or after it's been cooked or after it's been rehydrated, right? So in this discussion, we're going to use the first meal. So I'm just going to zoom in just so you can see what this kind of looks like, guys. So I'm going to zoom into the first column. The green column, that's going to be what we call core. That's your core. This is the name of the meal, the title. We've got the core component. So in most cases, it's beef, pasta. Well, let's not say beef. It's meat with pasta. What else have we got in there? That's pretty much it. Okay, meat, bacon's meat and pasta. That's the core. In the side here, in the next column here, in this category is a weight. So it's 1.25 kilograms of beef chunks. That is to make this meal for a family of five. That's what we've got here. There's me and four others. So again, these metrics are for a family of five. I'm going to change this and get the metrics for a family of one. And then you just times that by however many people are in your family. I'll do that at a later date. I said about the recipes. The recipes are in these links. I can just copy that, paste it into a web browser, and off I go. Actually, let's just do that just so you know. I'll copy that. Let's just throw that up into here. And then it will take us to the website where all the information is that you need. Okay, guys, that's that. Let's get rid of that. Okay, I've done that for you. That's there. Then let's just go over across to the core or the mix. Sorry, we're away from the core now. This is the mix. This, as you can see, can be a lot of it's veg. So this section here is veg, onions, carrots, celery, tomatoes, whether they're chopped, whether they're tinned, whether it's puree, whether it's a passata, whatever it is, it's tomatoes in that column or something similar. Peppers. Yeah, we got peppers. We got ricotta. We got broccoli, leeks, peas, mushrooms, and we go down here, cauliflower, spinach, and so forth. Yeah, in columns. One of the most popular ones here looks to be for those meals. So for certainly 50, 50 odd of them. There's a lot of them that require onions. So that's the mix. Now, I just want to mention this, guys, also in terms of the mix. Actually, let me just break it down into kind of how I do this. So I looked through many of the recipes, and then I decided which dishes are likely to be, be liked by everybody in this family unit. From the list, I then condensed it down until there were 60. So as you can see here, let's come across. We have the first 30 or 30, anyway, 30, and then we got a second 30. And then we got 30 lunches at the bottom. I then went through the ingredients of each meal. I entered them into the spreadsheet. I then spent most of the time breaking the ingredients down into sections or categories, as you've seen. With the meat, I calculated in weight how much meat was required for, or to cater for this menu for a family of five. Once everything was categorized, I then sort of sorted each individual ingredient into dedicated columns, which I've just shown you, making it easier to read, to sort, and also just to allow you to go off and shop in bulk for those items. Finally, there is the list of other items which I'm going to show you now, that you might find yourself kind of storing separately, stuff that maybe can't be added into the mix, should we say, or the meal for dehydration purposes. Let me give you an example of that. Oil, you can't dehydrate oil. So that has to be kind of stored separately. Let's just go across to the items of other. No, actually, let's cover this one quickly. Herbs and spices and seasoning. That's self-explanatory. You can see really what they're about there. And then other. So the types of items you're going to see here. Obviously, oil is popular. It's common in a lot of the meals. So bottled oil, you're going to want to keep to add to the meal. Once it's rehydrated, you can just put a splash of oil in, mix it up, and off we go. The ones in green are items that I feel that we can get in a powder form, or it is in a powder form. So cheeses you can get in powder forms. Stocks, well, they are kind of powdered anyway, and can be sort of added at the end. Lemon, actually, you can get powdered. These are all the stocks. Cheeses, butter beans, you can get powdered. Mustard, you can get powdered. Anyway, those are the green ones. Things like caster sugar, bacon actually should be over. It's not. It is meat, but it's not the core of that meal. So anyway, that's that. I don't want to go into these too much, but I'm going to make this spreadsheet available to you guys so you can go through it, you can look at it, and you can kind of pull out, your favorites, or you can create your own menu for your family. There might be stuff in here that you don't like or somebody doesn't like. You might find that there is a meal there that everyone likes, but your daughter doesn't like certain spices. So you can just take those spices out and still create the meal. Okay, that's the whole purpose of this. I wanted to test this. I wanted to test not cooking the meal, because cooking the meal's fine. Um, but I wanted to just I wanted to go through the process with you guys. So I've chosen this one in row 6 here. It's a beef cheek and bean ragu. Guys, I'm going to show you the photos in a minute of the process that I went through. This is the one that I sort of chose. It's the top of the list. And this is the one I kind of wanted to do as an example. And then I want to tell you how that went in terms of dehydrating or preparing, dehydrating, rehydrating, and what it tastes like. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this now. I'm just going to throw up this. It's just a couple of pictures, guys. When you when you look at the recipe for this meal, that's what it should look like. I'm going to warn you now, guys. My version of this didn't look like this at the end. Okay, it just didn't. So we started off with the beef cheek. I bought some diced beef. I washed and dried it, then cut it up into very small pieces, so smaller than the cubes. I'd done this so that the beef would cook quicker, but more for the dehydration or rehydration process. The beef will dehydrate quicker if it's in smaller pieces. The smaller, the quicker it dehydrates. And I would hope to think that when the meal is rehydrated, the beef will be better than previously done. So I've previously done beef and it's been chewy and stuff like that. I've tried to sort of counteract that and get around it. It is suggested that you have the beef cheek ragu with pasta or fresh bread. Well, in this case, I've done it with pasta. Um, and I have previously dehydrated pasta, which is rehydrated, and it's come back exactly the same as before, so it's perfect. Um, so let me just go past this. So that was the core. So the core for this is beef and pasta. So I bought the beef chunks. I cut them up, and I used scissors actually to cut them up into smaller pieces, and then off we went. The next piece, actually, the pasta obviously is part of the core as well. So that's that. So that's them cooking away, and again cooking away. The cannellini beans is part of the mix, but I was cooking them at the same time. So moving on to the mix, as you can see, the mix is chopped onions, is carrot, garlic, and cannelloni beans, and some tomato passata, which is the tomato sauce. The carrot, onion, and garlic were thinly sliced. The carrots were boiled for about 10 minutes, and then everything put into the pan just to sort of cook as a mix. The beans were also boiled for about 5 to 10 minutes, added to the pan, followed by the passata sauce, and then I just let the whole lot, as in the mix, cook for 10 minutes, and then that was done. So as you can see, all in the pan there, and off we went. I then placed the cooked beef and the cooked pasta and the cooked mix onto sort of separate dehydration shelves. And into the dehydrator they went for approximately 8 hours. So at this point, we now have the core and the mix done. The next part is the easiest part. It was the herbs, the spices, the seasoning, of which, none of that needed dehydrated. So for this meal, we're talking about thyme, sage, bay leaves, and garlic. Now, I didn't use a seasoned garlic. I used garlic, fresh garlic, and I sliced that up. So as you can see there, we've got the meat here, small cubes, that's been dehydrated. We've got the mix, cannellini beans, the carrots, the onions, and everything else. And then we've got the pasta. That's all been dehydrated. It's gone into that machine. It's come out and dehydrated. I was then just talking about the seasoning. So we've got thyme, sage, bay leaves. There's also a requirement. So actually, something I didn't mention on that spreadsheet. So for this now, for the remainder of the ingredients on this recipe for this, there is a requirement for 750 milliliters of red wine to be added, as well as some oil. So the oil part's fine, but the red wine was a bit of a hurdle for this meal. But the red wine, pretty much when you add it to any kind of cooking, is really just for the flavour. However, when dehydrated, I just felt that we would lose much of that flavour. So instead, to compensate, I bought a small bottle of concentrated red wine flavouring. I bought that off of eBay. It cost me £5, and you'll get multiple uses out of the small bottle. I'll show you a picture of it in a minute. But I just felt that was going to be better than buying a bottle of wine and pouring it in, then dehydrating, and then losing probably a lot of that flavor. What you'll find, guys, is when you kind of go through some of these meals and create them, that there will be changes, there will be substitutions or alterations and stuff like that. I'm going to try and get a lot of these meals done. I'm going to share the experience with you, and I'm going to tell you what hurdles I came across, so you don't have to go through that pain as such. So you can kind of make those changes, because doing this is going to be expensive, and we can't really afford it right now, to be honest with you. But I want to, I kind of want to get my head around this stuff. So when it does come to making these meals and dehydrating them, I want to make sure that when they're dehydrated, we've got the right meal that we need. It tastes right, it rehydrates properly, and all the rest of it. And finally, the beef cheek and bean ragu tends to be quite a thick meal. With flavour, as you could see from the original photo from the recipe. And although we have all of those seasonings going into the meal when rehydrating, I just wasn't sure that it was going to quite come back. I just didn't think it was going to be enough. I felt that there was something missing. So with that in mind, I bought one of those, it's like a Coleman's chili con carne packet, sort of powder mix, which you can see on the screen here, just to kind of thicken up the meal and just to add some additional flavour. When bagging this meal up into vacuum bags, we stick to the category approach. So what I mean by that is we firstly put in the core of the meal. So that's going to be pasta and beef, followed by the mix of the meal, that being the beans, the veg, and whatever else is in that mixed component. We then add the seasoning and some flavour, all powder form into the bag, and then the oil will be added at the end, at the very end, when the meal has been actually rehydrated, so it's ready to eat. Just a splash of oil, and we're good to go. So the bag is vacuum sealed. Let me just see, make sure I've got pictures of this, guys. You can see these vacuum bags. Let's go there. Yeah, so you can see that's how they start. We've got a vacuum bag seal. Like these items, guys. I keep saying that I can't afford to go off and do this and do that. I've struggled with work. I've been in IT for sort of 20, 25 years, and since January of last year, it's been really difficult. So the industry, which is an industry that I thought was foolproof, but it's been hit hard. So we're kind of having to sort of muddle through that. But I bought this kit last year when we were, we had the money to sort of get it. So that's why we've got it, and I'm trying to put it to good use. However, what I can't really commit to fully now is to go off and get all of this food and do shitloads of videos on all of these different meals and stuff like that and tell you what the experiences are. I'd like to, and I will do when I can. But at the moment, I've done one, and I just want to explain. It's not really the meal that I'm explaining. I'm explaining the menu, how it's broken down into those four categories. Because then when it comes to dehydrating and rehydrating, it's just a whole lot easier for you guys. And the ultimate goal here is obviously that once that meal is rehydrated, you get it as close to the original meal as we can. And that's it. So as you can see there, when it came to rehydrating this meal, I used a kind of flask kind of vessel there, boiled the kettle. I put the contents of the dehydrated meal into there. As you can see, this was the red wine flavoring. I put a few drops of that in there. Now, when it comes to rehydrating, it just depends on the meal itself. But what I'm going to do is the question that's going to be in your mind, basically, what were the results? How did it taste? And is it recommended? This meal, let me tell you about this meal because this is the one I've done. So firstly, how long did I rehydrate the meal for? There are different recommendations online, anywhere between 10 and 15, no, 20 and 30, 10 and 30 minutes, but that obviously is going to depend on the type of meal and its contents. I wanted this meal to be as good as I could get it, so I hydrated it for 25 to 30 minutes just to give it the best chance. Texture. So the pasta was fine. The mix was fine. But how was the beef? As expected, the beef was a little bit chewy. Even with the small pieces, it's a little bit like the beef jerky that you can buy. It was nice to have something to sort of chew on during this meal because everything else was kind of soft as you would have expected it to be. In terms of the flavors, there was a lot of flavors in this meal because of the herbs, the seasoning that had been sort of added to the vacuum bag separately and not added during the initial sort of cooking stage. There was a bit of a kick actually to this meal in terms of spices, and I couldn't work it out at first. But then I remembered that I put in the sachet of chili con carne, so that's the reason why. So the verdict on this meal for me, I was happy with the whole meal. It was better than expected, and going forward, I'm going to be preparing this meal for the family for our sort of dehydrated preps with the following changes. There's going to be changes I'm going to make now. Although it was edible and I ate the whole lot, the chili con carne was a bit spicy. So I'm going to replace that with something like a bolognese, a bolognese sachet or similar. I'd like to get a ragu sachet. I couldn't find them in Sainsbury's, but I'm sure we can get them online. If we can get that, that's perfect. That will deal with your flavouring and thickening up that meal. Something a little milder is kind of what I'm looking for. It was the wrong sachet. It was the wrong mix for this meal. I'm still, guys, I'm still unconvinced with the beef, the actual beef cubes or beef pieces or slices or however you want to get them. I I know even during an SHTF situation that the kids and the missus will still have a little bit of a moan about this. I know it's not quite the same, but I have rehydrated mincemeat previously. That comes back exactly the same. So if you do a bolognese, mincemeat comes back exactly the same, and I'm actually considering replacing all beef pieces or any meal that's got beef as in a core ingredient. I'm thinking of replacing it with minced beef. I know it's not going to be the same, but I just think the texture it compensates it or contributes towards the morale of the meal, and that's the whole purpose of this, really. When the shit hits the fan, guys, if you've got a meal that tastes okay and texture and everything else, it just boosts your morale. The only problem with this is going to be some of these meals are going to taste more like a spaghetti bolognese or some kind of bolognese of sorts. Again, that's just the way it is. So you're going to have to kind of compensate and sacrifice in places, guys. So tips for this meal. When preparing the beef, I bought the cubes, and then I used a pair of scissors, as I've shown on here, just to cut it down into smaller pieces. The texture is never going to be the same as it is when it's originally cooked. But I was happy with this. And for me, this wouldn't be a problem during an SHTF scenario. But I think I think the rest of the family might sort of have other verdicts on that. Onion, celery, and carrots, they were cut thinly. To be honest, you want to cut all of your veg for all of your meals thinly, then dehydrate, which will dehydrate quickly and also rehydrate perfectly. Rehydration for this particular meal was 25 to 30 minutes, just for the best results. And then I added the oil and the concentrated red wine flavor at the end, give it a good old stir, and we was good to go. So in terms of, I'm going to give it sort of 90% in terms of taste, texture, and everything else. It's the beef that, it's a pain in the ass. It is a pain in the ass. So for anyone unfamiliar, when we talk about dairy products, such as milk, butter, cream, cheese, and eggs, which are all perishable goods. They don't last for long anyway. All five of those actually can come in a powdered form. There are meals here that require milk, cream, butter, cheese, and eggs in some parts of those ingredients. Now, depending on the SHCF we find ourselves in, when looking at some of these ingredients, some will have to be substituted in view of shelf life. So, for example, although the milk, egg, or cheese powders may have a shelf life, so in a powdered form on the shelf, they'll still have a shelf life. Remember, they're going to be put into dehydration or dehydrated meal bags and then vacuum sealed. You're going to vacuum seal the bag, which is going to increase the shelf life again. I don't know the metrics. I haven't prepared a meal that's using any of these powdered ingredients, so I'm going to go through that process and work out what the shelf life is going to be. Because what you don't want to be doing is putting powdered milk, powdered cheese into a dehydrated meal, vacuum sealing it, and then that powdered dairy product having a reaction on the rest of the meal, and then when it comes to opening it, rehydrating, then you've got a problem. I want to make sure that we don't have that. All of the vegetables can easily be dehydrated. The same goes for fruit. Anywhere where you've got fruit, there isn't, I don't think, any fruit, hardly any fruit. I don't remember any fruit being on that spreadsheet. But which, and when I talk about veggies, it could be the tomatoes, peppers, leeks, mushrooms, anything. Anything that's considered a fruit or vegetable is easily dehydrated. I had no issues with the herbs section. You shouldn't have any issues with any herbs, spices, or seasoning anywhere. There's a long shelf life and nothing to worry about there, certainly when they're vacuum packed. I did have concerns about some of the items in the final category, and that is the category that's titled Other. I'm going to show you the spreadsheet in a minute, but I'm just sort of I'm just summarizing what I found with this particular meal. The items here are a mixed bag in the Other category. Actually, guys, let me bring it up because it's unfair for me to be talking about that and then no one understanding what we're talking about. So again, the core beef, cheek, and bean, all fine. This beef, this I think I'm going to replace with minced beef, I think. I, and it's going to be the same for there, 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 and any meal that's got beef. I'm going to replace it, I think, with minced beef. Now, the good thing about this is minced beef is going to be cheaper than beef cheeks or beef chunks and stuff like that. So there's a plus side to that. In terms of texture, that's a plus side. We're not going to have that chewy beef. The downside is that some of these meals are going to resemble a bolognese of some sorts because of the texture of the meal. Okay, I'm happy to sacrifice that, I think. Just over the spreadsheet again, we've got that link there. You can browse out to those recipes and see how they're made, and all the metrics in terms of measurements for certain ingredients. For this one, it was cannelloni beans. I just got a tin of beans, cannelloni beans, boiled those, and we were good to go. We had a onion, carrots, celery, tomato, passata. So I had that in like a carton. That was all mixed together, that lot, and then dehydrated as the mix section. Garlic. I used fresh garlic. You can get seasoned garlic, guys. It's probably better to do that. I was just wanted to encourage the taste, so I sliced up the garlic and then put that in with the mix. Again, guys, this is flexible. You can mix it, move it about, and stuff like that, whatever suits you. Thyme, sage, and bay leaves. That was the main part of the seasoning. And then we got the oil. I'll tell you what we're missing off of here. There is a requirement for red wine. That's probably why I've missed it, because I haven't even got it on here. Why is that not on here? Anyway, putting that aside, there should be red wine in there. Now I'm just going to put flavored drops. Okay, that's it. This section is going to be probably the more challenging. You can see here, there's a lot of meals with oil. Keep that in the bottle, and then that can be added at the very end, just to, do that, because it just doesn't dehydrate. Oil, butter, and things like that don't dehydrate, so you can't include that into your meal when it comes to dehydrating it. Otherwise, it won't dehydrate, and then the whole meal's done. A lot of stuff here is powdered, or can come in a powdered form. Cocoa powder. A lot of cheeses can come in a powdered form. All your stocks, whether it's chicken, beef, turkey, whatever, stock powdered. Okay, that can go in. You can get powdered lemon, red wine. Well, you can get that powder. That's more expensive than, let's say, the drops that we're talking about, cheeses and stuff like that. Okay, these things we're going to have to. I need to get around these. These ones that are in green are the ones that I've resolved. That we can get in powdered form. Red and white vinegar, you can get that in powdered form. Chocolate, you can definitely get in powdered form. So these can be powdered. It's just once you start getting this in a powdered form, it becomes a bit more expensive. So I've left it at the moment because of our financial situation. It's, there's no point in doing that. But what I'm trying to say, guys, is that I've broken this down. Let's have a look at some of the meals. I mean, you've got super green pasta, sausage and fennel. We've got Mediterranean feta. We've got Spanish rice. We've got mushroom soups. Oh, this is for the lunches, actually. Caramelized onion risotto with ale and balsamic vinegar. Baked butternut squash and sage risotto. Anyway, so it's all there. And let's just cover the breakfast quickly. Full English, scrambled egg. So the breakfast. So you can have a full English. We can have. I'll give you an example of that. You can get that in a tin form. It's called the Full Monty. I don't know if you've seen it in the shops. It's called a Full Monty, and it's got pretty much a full English there. It's got sausage, bacon, beans, tomatoes, and so forth. So that can just come in a tin. 2 years shelf life, probably more than that, to be honest, for your tins. This is not about tins. This is dehydration. Scrambled egg and bacon. So bacon, can be dehydrated. Then when we talk about eggs, that comes in a powder form. Okay, so we can have scrambled eggs and bacon. Pancake, powdered mix. You can get, obviously, pancake powdered mix. Granola. Well, that granola, oats, and various cereals can last for a long, long time. So again, that's your breakfasts. Other stuffs to consider. I'm going to go through this actually just quickly, if that's all right. I'll go through. I'm not going to go through every item. I'm just going to give one or two because I'm going to make this spreadsheet available to you. Honey, alcohol, protein powders, dried beans and grains and pasta, all good. Vitamins, oils, coffees. We've got raw sugar, rice, oatmeals, dried corn, salt. These items are for my tiered four foods. Okay, so we've got freeze dried, tier one, expensive, but the most convenient. We've got dehydrated food, which is what we're talking about now. That's tier two for me. Tier three is tinned and canned foods. I'm building up that stock, as and when I've got the money to do so. And then tier four is just kind of real basic stuff, real sort of raw stuff. But that's not to say it's the worst. It's this kind of stuff, wheat and granola and stuff that can store for a long time. It's just that when it comes to cooking a meal, you may need to add stuff. So if you've got seasoning and spices and stuff like that, you can add that stuff in. Guys, this video is not about this. I'm just sort of showing you, some of the stuff that's on this spreadsheet. Anyway, let's not go through that. That's the spreadsheet. Core, mix, herbs, and other. We've got first 30 meals there, second 30 meals there. They're your main meals, and then we got 30 lunches there, and then some breakfasts at the end. Okay, guys, that's that. I'm just gonna just finish off. I'm going to finish off. What was I going to finish off with? I'll tell you what I was going to finish off with. I've been out sort of collecting. Just quickly on the powdered stuff. This is powdered ice cream. You can get it unflavored. It can be vanilla, strawberry, whatever. But powdered ice cream will work for your yogurts and your cream requirement within some of those recipes. Cheese, well, that's cheddar. You can get it powdered other cheeses. So your four cheese pasta, anyway, the problem is with this, it can be expensive depending on what it is you're getting. Powdered butter, powdered eggs, and powdered milk and powdered cream. Okay, I just wanted to get that out there. Now, just to finish off, about 30 seconds, guys. I've been out collecting blackberries and apples whilst out walking the dogs, and I've been making sort of apple and blackberry crumbles for the last 4 weeks. I've got shitloads of blackberries stored in the freezer now, which the missus isn't happy about. They don't want any more crumbles either because they've been eating them for 4 weeks. But depending on where you live, guys, you might be lucky enough to find foods growing around you in public places, which will cost you nothing. Once you have your water preps in place, food has to come next, guys. You've got the maximum of 7 days before you're dead without water. That has to come at the very top of your list of preps, guys. That's it. Food, you can last for weeks, but you're going to have to consider that at some point. Those are the top two that I would suggest, guys. Anyway, yeah. This stuff's free except for the crumble. I made the crumble, the actual crumble, but those blackberries and apples, they cost me nothing. If there's any questions, please feel free just to ping me a question over via an email. I'm going to put my email address in the bottom of this in the comments, or just put it in the comments so we can all sort of see, and there'll be other people that might be able to give a better answer than I can. They might be more experienced in dehydrating food. Don't forget to get yourselves military fit, guys, and infantry aware. Just keep an ear to the ground and just just prepare, guys, just in case.